All right, today is an exciting day. We are going to answer one of the most common questions almost every mom has, which is this really labor? How do I know when it all starts and what is it exactly going to feel like? So, one of the things that a lot of people really misunderstand about labor is that it's not really this immediate thing where you go from having a normal day to your water breaking, having this, oh my gosh, I'm in labor, rushing to the hospital, having to get there really quick day. Usually, you have this long time where you have all these signs labor is coming soon, and you kind of like build in your signs, and then you start to notice contractions, and then they start to build, and then you're like, oh, okay, I'm really in labor. And it's normal for this to take, most moms will be in labor for early labor or showing signs that labor is soon for like a day or two. So let's talk first about this, that signs that labor will start soon. If you are having cramps, if you're feeling this intense urge to nest and clean your house and get everything ready, if you're having weird mucus and bloody show, backache, feeling tired, and maybe having contractions that start or stop or come for an hour and then disappear, or come only at night and then disappear in the morning when you wake up, these are all signs that labor will start soon. They are not signs that you are in labor yet. So peace and patience. Soon, if you're experiencing these things, let yourself be excited because you know that things are starting to happen, and soon it will be your day to have your birthday, your baby's birthday. Before we start talking more about exactly what labor is, I do want to give some caveats to, I say all throughout labor that labor is this beautiful, natural, and normal process that your body is made to do. For the most part, it is extraordinarily safe to give birth. However, I do just want to give you some warning signs that if you do notice that you're bleeding more than a light period, if you've noticed your baby has significantly slowed down in their movement, if they're the rule of thumb is basically you want them to have 10 movements every 1 to 2 hours. If you're kind of thinking like, well, I'm drinking a glass of juice and water and then I'm not feeling them moving, then just call your doctor. It's easy to go in and get checked. And same if you have like a headache that won't go away, even if you're taking Tylenol, swelling in your feet or blurry vision, things like that are warning signs. So it's good to call your doctor and chat with them if you notice that. Other than that, if you're having that bloody show and a little bit of mucus discharge, cramping, throwing up, all of those like uncomfortable things about labor are really, really good. If you have questions, always call and ask. But for the most part, when you call your doctor, your midwife, your doula, they're going to celebrate and say that's a really, really good thing that you're experiencing that, even if it doesn't feel wonderful in the moment. So let's talk a little bit more about what labor isn't. So water breaking, I know in the movies we almost always see the first sign of labor as water breaking. This happens about 20% of time for moms where water will break before labor starts, but it's not necessarily a sign that labor is starting now. If your water does break, call your doctor. They'll want to know. But for most of you, your water is not going to break until you've been in labor for a while. So just know that that is not necessarily something that you're waiting to happen before your labor starts. Another thing that isn't labor is general cramps or a dull pain, even though that can feel annoying. It is very, very common to feel a dull backache, cramps, or pain in your hips, contractions that fizzle, that stay spaced out, that you can breathe through and talk through and move through easily. All of those are signs that labor is coming, but it's not necessarily the time to run to your birth center just yet. We want to get things a little bit more established before your hospital will admit you, because one of the most frustrating things as a mom is to get everything ready, feel like, oh my goodness, this is the day, and be so excited, then get to the hospital and have them tell you it's too early, you need to go home. So no, these things are exciting, but they're not reasons to go in yet. So what is a contraction exactly? Well, a contraction is going to last from 30 to 45 seconds. You'll feel a definitive start, a rise, a peak, and it will fade away. They will come anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes apart. In early labor, they'll usually start out kind of spread out, and then as time goes by, they get closer and closer and closer. And they are intense enough that you pause and focus on it. Now, in early labor, at first, you'll just kind of observe it, like, oh, I think that was a contraction. And a lot of people kind of confuse those like pre-labor or early labor, pre-labor contractions with like those real early labor contractions that you might start measuring. And it can be kind of tricky. But a good rule of thumb is that if you're talking to someone and you're having a contraction and you're saying to them, oh my goodness, I'm having all these contractions, and they have to ask you, did you have a contraction while we were talking? Then you're probably still in pre-labor and not fully in active labor yet, but you are so close. So stay with it and stay excited, because those are all really, really good signs. All right, so let's talk about some things that can be really confusing about, is this really labor? Should I go in? Should I not go in? Real labor, your contractions are going to be really, really steady, and they're going to get close together. At first, it's normal for them to be spread out, and then they'll come closer and closer and closer until it's like a metronome, a 3 to 5 minute metronome, where they always start one after another. More like contraction, break, contraction, break, contraction, break. If you're having this labor pattern at the top where you have a whole bunch of contractions close together and then nothing for a while, then a little bit more together, then nothing for a while, that is still really early labor, maybe some pre-labor. And if it stops, often people will have this for an hour or two, or they'll have it at night and then it will fade in the morning. Then it's just false labor, which is so frustrating, and I hear you on that, but it's your body doing the warm-up and getting ready. So all good signs, but not truly the day yet. Very, very close though. The next really tricky, especially tricky labor pattern is if your contractions are coming really consistent, like we talked about, so consistent even that you can measure them with an app, and they're coming that 3 to 5 minutes apart regularly, but they're not getting any more intense. When it comes to your labor, there are 3 things that you are really looking for with your contractions, which is that they are getting longer. So they're growing from, your first ones might be like 15 seconds, and that's okay. That's great. Eventually they have to get to a minute, right? So you want them to be getting longer. You want them to be getting closer together, like we were just talking about over here. You really want that pattern to solidify so they're close together and they're steady. And then the third thing, which is the most tricky because you can't really measure it, is that they have to be getting stronger. So if you are feeling like your contractions are they're coming, but you can still walk through them, you can still talk through them, you're not really having to pause at all during them, then you're still in early labor, or you're still in pre-labor. So it's really good to note that, be excited, and then have patience. Sink into the peace and patience that, look, your body is doing the work. Things are beginning, and it's okay, and it's normal for pre-labor and early labor to take time. Time is really, really key in almost every labor. Now, I would recommend there are a lot of contraction timing apps out there. This one is by far my favorite because it doesn't have any obtrusive ads. Like if you need to make some contraction timers, if you go to make a change, or if you missed one and you need to add it, then you have to watch a video, which is really annoying to do during labor. This one doesn't have any of that stuff. It's completely free. It's called the Full Term app. Recommend having you and your partner download it so you both have it. That way you can send screenshots about your to your birth team about your labor contractions. You can measure your contractions for 30 to 60 minutes and then move on with your day, repeating only if you notice a change. So with that, since you're going to be in early labor, most of you for a day or two, or for a while, where you're having contractions that aren't painful enough to really stop you in your tracks, but are painful enough to slow you down, where you might, pause during the contraction. What I always recommend is measure your contractions for like 30 to 60 minutes, then go on with your day. Let yourself do the things you would normally do, or build in some special things into your day to keep you distracted, to keep you busy, to keep you moving, also to keep you rested, keep that balance of resting and moving. And then if you're starting to notice any changes, then measure again, or time contractions in the morning, and then again in the afternoon, and then again in the evening, and just see if they've come closer together or if you've had any significant changes throughout the day. So that leads us to the question, okay, great, I'm going to be in labor, early labor, for a while. And again, this is not painful labor. This is not where you are like seeing in the videos people like, ow, 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 ow. This is where think about like a warm-up to a workout. It's there, but it's not going to, if you're breathing through your contractions, you'll be able to move through them just fine. All right, so what should you do during early labor? Well, you guys, I know this may sound crazy, but at the beginning, while you can, you should ignore labor as much as you can and continue going about your life. If you eat in the morning and you're having contractions in the morning, eat. If it's getting close to the evening, try to sleep or take a nap. If you normally take a nap after eating lunch, take a nap after eating lunch. Just continue with your normal day, stay busy, pass your time with things that you enjoy. I know I've said this before, but baking a cake can be such a fun tradition to celebrate your baby's birthday. Calling friends and asking them about their positive stories, or going for a last dinner out with your partner are all really fun, positive, exciting things that you can do to pass the time in this early labor place. And keep in mind that it's really good to move around during early labor, and we'll talk about that more in the next video with more labor coping tools and things you can do to kind of condense the process. But now's not the time to exhaust yourself with like a 10-mile walk. Labor is a process, especially the early labor can be very, very, a lot longer than most people expect. So give it the time and find peace and patience within yourself, and trust that everything is going at the speed that it's supposed to be going. All right, so when should you go to your hospital or your birth center or ask your midwife to come join you at home? Well, for most hospitals, birth centers, they're going to give you the rule 511. If you're doing a natural birth where you don't want an epidural, you can bring this down to 411, which means that your contractions are coming every 4 to 5 minutes. They are lasting a full minute each, and it's been that way for an hour. Let me say that again. Contractions are 5 minutes apart from the start of one to the start of the next. They last a full 60 seconds, not 30 seconds, not 45 seconds, not 50 seconds, 60 seconds. That's kind of when early labor ends and active labor begins. And that's when you're going to really need a lot more focus, and you really kind of go into the process of labor instead of just letting it happen in the background. 511. All right. Now, if you are not sure, I always say to try the water test. So if you're having one of these more tricky labor contraction patterns where, maybe your contractions are really steady, but they're not that intense and you're just not really sure if they're strong enough yet. Or, they've been kind of sporadic, kind of like lots of contractions and breaks, one of those other more tricky labor patterns. One of the things that you can do to really test, is my labor established enough that it will stay when I move to the hospital, is to take a bath. In general, when you get into the water, if you're in active labor, your body will relax and your contractions will pick up and they'll stay really strong. And the water will also give you a tremendous amount of relief while you're going through that process. However, if you're in the early part of labor and you relax, your contractions might fade, space out, become really simple, get shorter and easier. And you know what? Maybe I should probably stay at home a little bit longer so that labor is fully established before I go in. Because one of the things that's super, super common in labor, because birth is so hormonal, because it's driven so much by our anxiety and happiness and anxiety levels, for a lot of women, if there's any stress about going into the hospital and just the stress of being asked a lot of questions and having to be monitored and the unfamiliarity of it, even if you're really comfortable in the hospital otherwise, it can really make labor step back a little bit. So you want to make sure that your labor is really established before you go in, so that, again, you don't want to get there, go through all of that process of getting checked in, then be told, you know what, you gotta go back home and spend a few more hours walking around before we'll admit you. So do the water test, and if things stay nice and clumped together and steady and strong, then head on in. And if they kind of space out, then try to get some sleep if you can, or even sleep in the bath, because in a couple hours you're going to be up, things are going to pick up, you're going to be going, and it will be your time soon. One mom that I talked to, she said for her in early labor that one of the things that brought her a lot of peace and patience was to know that today, on this day when I'm giving birth, there are 300,000 women that give birth with me today. And just that feeling of I am not alone, being together with other women, feeling the safety of the process, knowing that so many other women are doing the same thing at the same time, brought her the ability to give her that peace and patience to respect the process. So I wanted to share that little affirmation with you. And then one last thing as we close is this one. I relax, I breathe, I let my body work. Because here in early labor, all you have to do is breathe and move, and it's your time to really establish and move into that trust in your body and let your body do its job. I know that you can do this. Again, head into the hospital when those contractions are 511. The app is called Full Term, I believe. Hold on, I'm going to go back and just double check. If you didn't get the app yet, download this one, Full Term, because that's the one that will really, really, really time your contractions perfectly and be the easiest to use as you labor. All right, Mama, I know you can do this, and I will see you in the next video. We'll talk more about what you should do during early labor as far as labor positions and managing all this vast amounts of time that most of you will have. And for those of you that sleep through early labor or get to skip it entirely or have it so faint it goes on in the background, congratulations, that's awesome. All right, let me know if you have any questions and we will talk again soon.